With Ellie Mina, who's, a board effectiveness consultant here in beautiful Vancouver. Beautiful day here in the fall. And also a registered parliamentarian. And, Ellie, we've known each other for quite a while. You've produced a number of books. And now one, which has been around a while, the 101 boardroom problems, you refer to the idea of trying to give people a metaphor to understand decision making, and you talk about the puzzle. So let's start there. Describe the puzzle to us, and then we'll kind of go through some of the ideas and pitfalls and aspects of decision making.
So this one goes substantially beyond my work as a registered parliamentarian, where I advise organizations on how to run meetings and how to use the tools to make sure one person speaks at a time, that we keep time limits or keep our discussion as efficient as possible, and maintain the respect for individuals without, in other words, we can disagree without ever being disagreeable, without ever attacking an individual. We just talk about the message rather than the individual, the person who delivers the message. Procedure, though, has limited use, and so what I find is sometimes, in as much as Robert's Rules of Order has 700 pages, it does not address many of the common problems. So I sometimes say that if the only tool you have is a hammer, then every problem looks like a nail. So if the only tool you have is a 700-page Robert's Rules of Order, then every problem looks like a motion, an amendment to the amendment, a point of order, an appeal, which is fascinating, but it really does not address the core issue, which is we have a group elected wanting to make decisions together, and the challenge is how do we bring in all the relevant information so the group can make an informed decision. So in as much as Robert's Rules has 700 pages, it never talks about making wise decisions. It talks about the how. It does not address the what. What is the outcome? Is it a good decision in terms of serving the community of today, serving the community of tomorrow, maybe even 25, 30 years down the road? We need to think that way when the challenges to society and to community are gigantic. So that's, I'm looking at a model which will essentially pool the wisdom that's available to us in a room, maybe, for example, bring in input or pieces of the puzzle from the elected members and their perspective, bring in the factual foundation that is necessary to make informed decisions from the staff perspective, such as the legalities, the finances, the operational impact of a decision compared to another option, so that people can listen, learn from the discussion, and make fully informed decisions. So that's a challenge. And it doesn't sound like it is, but it's like a jigsaw puzzle. We want to make sure that we have all the relevant pieces on the table, so we have all the information necessary. We make sure that we have open minds around the room, so each individual can listen, learn from the discussion, and make fully informed decisions. And in many political reality, that is anything but.
And why is that, Ellie? So you describe the puzzle, and if you're missing some pieces, and you mentioned two political viewpoints, debate as technical, but I think you also in your book refer to stakeholders and the public. So very simple model. Why do you think it falls short?
Well, my thinking is that we sometimes have outcome-oriented democracy. The culture is we got to push forward with a certain outcome that we conceived ahead of the meeting, when in fact we need to have a learning-based democracy. Almost treat the boardroom table like a university, so like a learning environment. So it means this. It means that we come to a meeting not with an empty mind, but with an open mind. So we may have some maybe promises that we made to electors before being elected. Maybe we have some ideas of what would be the best outcome. We're politically very attached to it, but to the extent that we stop listening, it's a problem. To the extent, for example, that, let's say I'm a counselor and I made a deal with someone else ahead of the meeting on how we will pool our votes and achieve a certain outcome, it means that we are compromising our ability to listen, to learn, and to adjust our perspectives and to adjust our outcome based on the discussion, based on what we learn.
So, I mean, the idea of having a closed mind is one. But you also refer to maybe not so evident, biases. So what kind of biases occur that don't allow us to fill in the pieces of the puzzle?
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe this is something to consider. It's common to many municipal settings, and it is, for example, a board or a council consisting of representatives of wards.
Right.
There's a certain region within the area, and so what ends up happening is people come in, get elected by a certain portion of the area that's being governed, and they bring in the thought that we are here to serve and work for the people who elected us. Otherwise, they will not elect us next time.
Right.
Otherwise, we'll suffer political penalties because we're not loyal to them. When in fact, one of the models I use in my book is the two hats dilemma,
Right.
which means that bringing wisdom and knowledge from our constituents is fine. That's part of the jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah.
We want to add that piece to the table, but we also want to learn from our colleagues from other areas who contribute their pieces of the puzzle. And in the end, our job is not always to be necessarily loyal to our constituents, but to make a fully informed decision that's good for the region as a whole.
Yeah.
That often is a cause of great controversy and conflict in organization, and that's something to me it's easy to explain. In my book I comment on the two hats dilemma.
Yeah.
So bringing wisdom and knowledge from a constituent is fine, it's good. But the thing is, the constituents also need to know of what our role is.
Yeah.
Our role in the end is to, once we listen and learned from our colleagues, is to make a decision, an informed decision based on the needs of the full region, not only of our constituents.
So we've got, electoral bias. Is there any other biases, such as my own profession or culture, or?
So, and it's a question we always have to ask: is it something that shuts down our minds? It shuts down, it suppresses valid input and prevents it from coming to our heads, and so we stop being learners and stop being yes but kind of a person. With the word yes but, it's been characterized as a verbal eraser. So we say, yes, I hear you, but.
Yeah.
The yes is important, but the but is so much more important.
Yeah.
It means that I have not listened.
Yeah.
It means that I have not learned from what's being presented because it seems to contradict something that I have in mind. It's maybe some bias I have in some things that I have learned. So lifelong learning means that we come to a meeting with a mind like a sponge. So it's not empty, but it's open.
Yeah.
Means we learn. And if the system works, I can tell you on one occasion I was so refreshed by listening to an individual who came to a meeting with some ideas, and at some point he said, Mr. Mayor, I just want to explain something so the community knows. When I came to this meeting, I thought about this motion that's before us right now, and I was sure that I will vote against it. I was positive. But having sat here for the past hour and listened to my colleagues and listened to our professional staff and the public, my mind has changed and I'm going to vote in favor of it. When that happens, it means the model is in place. It means that people are embracing the notion of lifelong learning, and they're going to make informed decisions for the citizens of today, for the citizens of tomorrow, because that's what it is about. It's about your legacy. Smart decisions, informed decisions, ones that would work judiciously for the full range of stakeholders that you serve.
Well, Ellie, when you speak about that, there's almost sounds like two parts. There's information, often technical, and usually from staff, and then there's viewpoints.
Exactly.
Help us kind of with that, because viewpoints are just opinions, right? And so, how do you balance that kind of discussion or separate them?
And this is a great thing to consider because, in fact, this is one place where the book Robert's Rule of Order is a challenge, because it starts with the premise of we start with a motion,
right?
And so people use that and make a motion, and they have a right to do that. But the problem is they don't have the factual foundation. Sometimes motions are based on an opinion compared to fact. So the way I like to do it is I look at the jigsaw puzzle and divide it into portions. One portion of it will be the opinion piece, which means there'll be different opinions, but opinion without fact is really not very meaningful and not very useful. We say, let's make sure that before we start putting a fact on the table, let's make sure that we have the factual foundation on the table. And that is provided by the administration. That's the role of the administration, to be unbiased, to be professional, to provide things that are non-political in nature, but they are factual, legal advice, financial advice. What impact will a decision have on human resources within the organization? Is the capacity going to sustain that kind of decision, or is there some risk of capacity diminished? So we need to have that factual foundation first. And once we have it in place, then the opinion can come in terms of examining option 1, option 2, option 3, and then you express your opinion, but it is based on facts. Because again, opinions without facts is not very meaningful.
So there's almost like there's the information sharing portion, maybe the opinion sharing portion, and maybe then there's the debate. So what I hear you saying is almost a resolution maybe shuts down those preliminary parts. Too soon.
It can. If we introduce a motion too quickly, the way I describe it is a motion is here as a solution, a solution to a problem. If we understand the problem, then it's good to do that. But if we come up with a motion too quickly and people say, oh, Robert's Rule of Order allows me to make a motion whenever I want to, the fact we have a right to do something does not mean that it's a smart thing to do. So let's resist the temptation to make motions too quickly. Let's make sure that we learn, especially when the issues are complex and big, push the pause button. So this is what I'm suggesting. In some instances, with council, they ask me, can we have any discussion without having any motion on the floor? And I'm saying from a decision-making perspective, it makes all the sense in the world. Let's have staff analyze what is the problem, what is the complexity, so then we know what is the problem itself, and we also know some of the complexities that most people wouldn't think about. So then we have that factual foundation, and if staff can then say, here's option 1, here's option 2, and here are some of the benefits, drawbacks of one and the other, then we can make a good decision based on all the facts and based on our opinion.
Well, I like your thinking. I mean, we'll talk about effective meetings and procedures, but what I really hear you saying is good decision making shouldn't rely on a procedural bylaw. And I want to thank you very much for that, Ellie.
Quickly, there are times when municipalities, as a parliamentarian, would hire me to assist them in rewriting the procedure bylaw. And I used to do more of that. I end up doing less of that because I find that, yes, we do need to have some fundamental procedures, but to go into a 30, 40-page bylaw, my experience is often it's there, but it's not followed.
It should be a fallback,
but often it's people put in so much and almost prescribe every corner, and so life doesn't work like that. So what we need is instead of looking at procedure, what we need is to have a good culture. And culture is like the set of norms that govern a body. It's impossible to codify it because it's common sense. So, for example, you say we have a culture of learning. And to me, that's gold. You have to have a culture of learning, and you have to make informed decisions. I don't think there's a question of that, but sometimes people don't come in with that culture. So we need to embrace it. Say, yes, maybe we've done this in the past, but what we owe the community is to come in with open minds, and the community needs to understand that, for example, if I had a conversation with a citizen, and they say to me, I expect that you will vote against this motion. You are my representative, I voted for you. Then you say, thank you for voting for me, but my answer is, I must come to a meeting with an open mind. With that in mind, I'm saying no. So takes
Great.
political courage to do that,
Yeah.
but really it promotes the same culture of learning.
Thanks, Sally.
Pleasure.